When they kicked me out of the group home, I had nowhere to go until an abandoned ranch called me home. That's the short version anyway. The truth is a lot more complicated. It's a story about how the places we think are empty are actually full of ghosts, and how the people we think abandoned us were sometimes the only ones holding on. If you've ever felt lost, or like you didn't have a place to belong, then stick around. This story is for you. And if you feel a connection to what I'm about to share, consider subscribing. We're building a community here for people who've had to fight for their own endings. The day I turned 18 wasn't a celebration. There was no cake, no presents, no off-key singing from people who loved me. There was just a cardboard box, a thin manila envelope, and the sound of a lock clicking behind me. For 12 years, the state had been my parent. It fed me, clothed me, and moved me from one temporary home to another like a piece of lost luggage. And on my 18th birthday, it fired me. Mrs. Davison, the home's director, stood on the porch with her arms crossed, her face a familiar mask of strained patience. She'd seen hundreds of kids like me come and go. I was just another file to be closed. "Leo," she said, her voice flat. "The bus ticket is in the envelope, along with everything else." Everything else? That was the great mystery. For the last month, she'd been telling me there was a provision made for me. I assumed it was a $100 gift card and a list of homeless shelters. I slid my thumb under the flap of the envelope, my heart a cold, tight knot in my chest. Inside, there was a one-way Greyhound ticket to a town I'd never heard of, Jasper Creek, Wyoming. Underneath it was an old, heavy brass key, tarnished with age, attached to a faded leather tag. The final item was a crisp, folded letter from a law firm. I unfolded it. The letterhead was simple. Gable and Associates, attorneys at law. It was addressed to me, Leo Sterling, and it requested my presence at their office on the day after my 18th birthday to discuss the final settlement of my grandfather's estate. My grandfather. The name felt foreign, like a word from a language I'd forgotten. I had only a handful of memories of him, fractured and hazy, like photographs left out in the sun. A rough, calloused hand holding mine. The smell of sawdust and pine. A deep, rumbling laugh that made his whole chest shake. He'd disappeared from my life when I was 6, right after my parents died. The social workers told me he was gone, that he couldn't take care of me. I'd spent 12 years believing he'd abandoned me. Another person who decided I wasn't worth the trouble. And now, this. An estate? It had to be a mistake, or a cruel joke. I looked up at Mrs. Davison. "What is this?" She just shrugged, a small, tired gesture. "We just hold the documents, Leo. We're not told the contents. All I know is your grandfather, Arthur Sterling, left instructions that this was to be given to you on your 18th birthday and not a day before." Her duty was done. She turned and went back inside, leaving me on the cracked concrete steps with my life in a box and a ghost in an envelope. The cold morning air bit at my cheeks. The world felt enormous and terrifyingly empty. I had 2 choices. I could throw the envelope away, get on a bus to some random city and disappear, or I could get on the bus to Jasper Creek and face whatever this was. For 12 years I had drifted. For 12 years my life had been decided for me. This was the first real choice I'd ever had. I looked down at the key in my palm. It felt strangely warm. It was a piece of a past I didn't know, a story I'd never been told. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt a flicker of something other than numbness. It was a dangerous, fragile thing. It was curiosity. I picked up my box, walked down the driveway without looking back, and headed for the bus station. I was going to Jasper Creek. I was going to find out what my grandfather had left me. The bus ride was a 20-hour journey through the heart of a country I'd only ever seen on screens. I watched cities bleed into suburbs, suburbs into farmland, and farmland into vast, empty stretches of plains under a sky so big it felt like it could swallow you whole. My reflection in the grimy window was a stranger's face, pale, thin, with eyes that looked older than 18. I was a collection of faded memories and institutional habits. I knew how to make my bed with military precision, how to eat fast before the food was gone, how to make myself small and invisible to avoid trouble. But I didn't know how to be a person in the world. I didn't know who Leo Sterling was supposed to be. I clutched the envelope in my jacket pocket, the sharp edges of the key pressing into my ribs. It was the only solid thing I had. The bus groaned into Jasper Creek just as the sun was setting, painting the western sky in violent strokes of orange and purple. The town was little more than a wide spot in the road. A single main street lined with brick buildings, a gas station with a flickering sign, a diner with a faded open sign in the window, and a whole lot of silence. The air smelled different here. Clean, cold, with the scent of pine and dust. It was the smell from my memories. A shiver ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. I was the only person who got off the bus. The driver gave me a curious look as he handed me my box. Then the bus hissed and pulled away, leaving me alone in the deepening twilight. I felt like I'd landed on another planet. I found a cheap motel at the end of the street, the kind with a buzzing neon sign and threadbare carpets. I paid for one night with the last of the cash the group home had given me. In the room, under the flickering glare of a single bare bulb, I laid out the contents of the envelope on the stained bedspread. The key, the ticket stub, the lawyer's letter. Gable and Associates was just a few blocks away. My appointment was for 9 in the morning. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. What could an old man who abandoned his grandson possibly leave behind? Debt? An apology? A final, cruel joke? I drifted into a restless sleep, haunted by dreams of a big, open sky and a deep, rumbling laugh I couldn't quite place. Morning came too soon. The sky was a pale, washed-out gray, and a bitter wind swept down the main street, carrying a few stray snowflakes with it. I found the lawyer's office above the town's only hardware store. A steep, narrow staircase led up to a heavy oak door with a frosted glass panel that read Gable and Associates. I took a deep breath, the cold air stinging my lungs, and pushed it open. The man behind the large wooden desk was older than I expected, with a fringe of white hair around a bald head and a face etched with the kind of deep lines that come from a lifetime of serious expressions. He wore a tweed jacket that looked older than I was. He looked up over a pair of reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Mr. Sterling, I presume," he said. His voice was dry, like rustling paper. "I'm Thomas Gable. I was your grandfather's attorney. Please, have a seat." I sat in the stiff leather chair opposite him. The office was filled with the smell of old books and dust. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. Mr. Gable folded his hands on the desk and looked at me, his gaze steady and unreadable. "I'll get straight to the point, Leo. Your grandfather, Arthur, passed away nearly 12 years ago, shortly after you were placed in state custody." This was news to me. I'd always imagined him out there somewhere, living his life. The thought that he'd been gone all this time sent a strange, hollow ache through my chest. "His will was very specific," Mr. Gable continued. "Everything was to be held in trust for you until your 18th birthday. He was adamant about that." He slid a thick folder across the desk. "He left you his property, a ranch, About 200 acres, a house, a barn. It's called the Sterling Ranch. It's been in your family for generations." I stared at him, unable to process the words. A ranch, a home. It felt impossible. There had to be a catch, and there was. "However," Mr. Gable said, his tone shifting, becoming more cautious, "the estate is not without its complications. Arthur fell on hard times before he passed. The property carries a significant amount of debt, specifically back taxes, to the tune of nearly $20,000. The flicker of hope in my chest died instantly. $20,000. I had $43 to my name. It was a cruel joke. To be given a home and have it be impossible to keep. "The taxes are due in 30 days, he added. "If they're not paid, the county will seize the property and sell it at auction." He let that sink in for a moment before pushing another thinner folder toward me. "But there is another option. An offer has been made on the property. A corporation, a development group called Mountain Valley Holdings, has been trying to acquire the land for some time. They're aware of the tax situation. They've made a standing offer to purchase the ranch as is. They'll assume the tax debt, and they are prepared to offer you $5,000 on top of that. $5,000. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. It was a fresh start. I could go anywhere, be anyone. It was the sensible choice, the easy choice. Get out from under this impossible debt, take the money, and never look back. It was exactly what a system kid was supposed to do. Take the practical way out, don't get sentimental. But then I looked down at the old brass key I was still clutching in my hand. My grandfather had wanted me to have this place. He'd set up a trust, waited 12 years for me to be a man. Why? Why go to all that trouble if he just wanted me to sell it to the first bidder? "This corporation?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why do they want the land so bad?" Mr. Gable sighed, taking off his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. "They've been buying up a lot of the old ranches in the area. They say they're planning a luxury resort. Golf course, ski lodges, that sort of thing. Your grandfather's property is one of the last holdouts. It has water rights, which makes it particularly valuable to them." He leaned forward, his expression softening slightly. "Leo, my official advice as the executor of the estate is to consider this offer very seriously. $5,000 and a clean slate is a remarkable gift for a young man in your position. The ranch, it's been empty for over a decade. It's likely in a state of serious disrepair. It would take a fortune to make it livable, a fortune you don't have." Everything he said was logical. It was the smart move. But something in my gut, a stubborn, unfamiliar feeling, resisted. "Can I see it?" I asked. "Before I decide, I want to see the ranch." Mr. Gable looked surprised, but he nodded slowly. "Of course. It's your property, for the next 30 days at least." He picked up the phone. "I'll call Martha from the diner. Her husband, Jim, can give you a ride out there. It's about 10 miles out of town. He's heading that way to check on his own livestock." He gave me the directions. He gave me a sad, sympathetic smile. It was the smile of a man who knew he was sending me to see a dream that was already dead. An hour later, I was in the passenger seat of a rattling old pickup truck, watching the town disappear in the rearview mirror. The driver, Jim, was a man of few words, with a weathered face and hands as tough as old leather. He pointed out landmarks as we drove, his voice a low rumble. "That's Miller's Ridge. My granddad used to hunt elk up there." We turned off the paved road onto a dirt track that seemed to stretch into forever. The landscape was stark and beautiful, a rolling sea of brown grass and gray sagebrush under that enormous Wyoming sky. It was empty, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. After another 20 minutes, he slowed the truck. "Well, there she is," he said, nodding toward a weathered wooden sign half swallowed by weeds. The paint was almost completely gone, but I could just make out the carved letters, Sterling Ranch. We pulled up a long, overgrown driveway toward a collection of buildings that looked like they were slowly being reclaimed by the earth. There was a house, a 2-story structure with peeling white paint and a sagging porch. To its right stood a massive barn, its red paint faded to a dull, rusty brown, one of its huge doors hanging crookedly from a single hinge. A few smaller outbuildings were scattered around, their roofs caved in. The place looked haunted. It looked broken. But as I stepped out of the truck, a gust of wind moaned through the eaves of the house, and it sounded less like a lament and more like a sigh of recognition, like the place was breathing. "I can wait," Jim offered, "or come back for you in a few hours." "I'll walk back," I said, not taking my eyes off the house. "I think I need some time here." He just grunted, a sound that might have been understanding, and with a final nod he drove off, leaving me in a cloud of dust and a profound, ringing silence. I was completely alone. I walked up the creaking steps of the porch, my boots kicking up years of dust. The front door was locked, its wood swollen and cracked. I slid the old brass key from my pocket. It felt like it belonged here. With a screech of protest from the rusty lock, the key turned. The door swung inward on a groan, opening into darkness and the smell of stale air, dust, and time itself. I stepped inside, and the door swung shut behind me, plunging me into a dim, gray light filtered through dirt-caked windows. Dust motes danced in the pale shafts of sun. The house was a time capsule. Furniture was draped in white sheets, ghostly shapes in the gloom. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a stack of firewood still resting beside it, as if waiting for a match. I ran my hand along the back of a shrouded armchair, and a plume of dust rose into the air. This was his house, my grandfather's, a place I might have lived in another life. I moved through the downstairs rooms like a ghost myself. The kitchen held old, simple appliances and a thick layer of grime. A calendar on the wall was turned to August, 12 years ago. In the living room, I pulled a sheet off a bookshelf. The books were still there, old westerns, manuals on animal husbandry and engine repair. The life of a man I never knew. I felt a crushing sense of loss. Not just for him, but for the life I could have had here. The life that was stolen from me. Upstairs, there were 2 bedrooms. One was clearly his. A simple iron bed frame, a tall wooden wardrobe. The other room was smaller. It was empty, except for a small wooden rocking horse in the corner, covered in a thick coat of dust. I walked over to it and touched its carved mane, and then a memory, sharp and sudden as a flash of lightning. I was small, sitting on this very horse. My grandfather was on his knees in front of me, making the horse rock back and forth, his deep laugh filling the small room. My laugh, high and childish, mixing with his. The memory was so vivid it made me gasp. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. This was my room. This was my home. The thought was overwhelming. This wasn't just a property, a collection of assets and debts. It was a part of me. I spent the rest of the afternoon just walking, touching things, trying to coax more memories from the silent walls. But there was nothing else. Just that one perfect, painful flash of a forgotten life. As evening approached, I knew I had to make a decision. Selling seemed like a betrayal of that little boy on the rocking horse and of the man who had made him laugh. But keeping it was impossible. I sat on the dusty floor of my old room, my head in my hands, the weight of it all pressing down on me. There was no way out. Then my eyes fell on a large roll-top desk in my grandfather's room. It was the one piece of furniture not covered by a sheet. It looked important, solid. I went over to it and tried to open the roll-top. It was locked. I tried the drawers. All locked. Except one. The bottom right drawer slid open with a soft groan. It was empty, save for a single, small silver key taped to the bottom. It was too small for the desk. I looked around the room, my eyes scanning for a lock it might fit, and then I saw it. A small keyhole, almost hidden in the ornate carving on the side of the desk. A secret compartment. My breath caught in my throat. I slid the key into the lock. It turned. A section of the wood paneling popped open, and inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a stack of envelopes tied together with a piece of twine. And on top of the stack, in a familiar shaky cursive, was my name. Leo. My hands were trembling as I lifted the stack of letters out of the secret compartment. There were at least a dozen of them, the paper yellowed and brittle with age. I untied the twine, my heart hammering against my ribs. The first envelope was thicker than the rest. I carefully opened it, my fingers clumsy with a mixture of fear and hope. Inside were several pages, filled with a dense, slightly slanted handwriting. I sat down on the edge of the dusty bed and began to read. "My dearest Leo," it began. "If you are reading this, then it means you are 18. It means you are a man, and it means I am long gone. There is so much I have to tell you, so much I have to explain. I know you must hate me. I know you must believe I abandoned you. I need you to know that isn't the truth. Not the whole truth, anyway." The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I blinked them back, forcing myself to keep reading. Putting you in the system was the hardest thing I have ever done. It was not a choice I made lightly. It was a choice I made to save your life. My breath hitched. Save my life? From what? The letter went on to explain in vague but chilling terms that he had gotten involved with some very dangerous people. He called it a debt of honor that had spiraled out of control. He said they weren't the kind of people you could just walk away from. They had threatened him, and through him they had threatened me. They saw you as leverage, son, a way to control me. As long as you were with me, you were a target. The only way I could protect you was to make you disappear, to hide you in the one place they would never think to look, and where their reach couldn't extend, inside the maze of the state system. I had to sever all ties. I had to let the world, and you, believe I was just another old man who couldn't handle raising his grandkid. It broke my heart, Leo. Every single day for the rest of my life, it broke my heart. I had to stop reading, the paper shaking in my hands. A raw, ragged sob tore its way out of my throat. 12 years of bitterness, a feeling unwanted and thrown away, began to crumble. It wasn't abandonment. It was protection. It was a desperate, painful sacrifice. I cried then, for the first time since I was a little boy. I cried for the man I had misunderstood for so long. I cried for the years we had lost. I cried for the lonely, angry kid I had been. After a long time, I wiped my eyes on my sleeve and continued reading. The letter didn't give details about who these people were, or the nature of the debt. It was as if he was afraid to even write it down. But it gave me something else. It gave me a mission. "This ranch," he wrote, "is your birthright. It is all I have left to give you. I know there will be debts, taxes owed. I am so sorry for that. I tried to prepare, but time ran out. But don't let them take it, Leo, not them. They will come for it. They will be patient. They will use the law and money, and they will try to squeeze you out. That corporation, Mountain Valley Holdings, it's them. It's just a new name for the same old poison. They don't want the land for a resort. They want it because they think I hid something here, something I took from them when I ran. They are wrong. What I took from them was you." A cold dread washed over me. The easy way out, the $5,000 from Mr. Gable's office, was a trap. It was them. The people who had haunted my grandfather's life were now haunting mine. And they were about to get the one thing he had sacrificed everything to protect. The letter ended with instructions. "I couldn't leave you with nothing, son. I did what I could. Go to the barn. In the back, by the old milking stalls, you'll find a loose floorboard. The third one from the west wall. Pry it up. What's under there is for you. It's not much, but it might be enough. It's a start. Be strong, Leo. This place is in your blood. Don't let them have it. Your loving grandfather, Arthur." I folded the letter, my hands steady now. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my gut, but it was joined by something new, a fierce, burning resolve. This was no longer about a piece of property. It was about justice. It was about honoring the sacrifice of a man I had only just begun to know. I stood up, the dust motes swirling around me in the fading light. I had a choice to make. I could still walk away, disappear with the knowledge I now had, or I could stay and fight. It's a funny thing finding your purpose. For years, my purpose had been to just survive the next day, the next placement, the next set of rules. It was a small, cramped, defensive way to live. But standing there in that dusty bedroom, holding my grandfather's words, I felt my world expand. The choice wasn't even a choice. It was a calling. This was my fight. And it's here I want to pause for a second and talk to you directly. Maybe you've had a moment like this in your own life. A moment where the easy path and the right path fork in front of you. A moment where you learn a truth that changes everything you thought you knew about your past. It's terrifying, isn't it? It feels like the ground is falling out from under you. But it's also a gift. Because it's in those moments that we find out who we really are. If you're facing a choice like that right now, or if you're still healing from one you had to make a long time ago, I want you to know you're not alone. The stories we tell ourselves about our lives can change. The people we thought were villains can become heroes. And the endings we thought were written in stone can be torn up and rewritten. It takes courage. It takes fighting for the truth. If this resonates with you, if you believe in second chances and fighting for what's right, I hope you'll continue this journey with me. This community is for all of us who have had to find our own way home. Now, let's get back to the barn. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and the world was bathed in a deep purple twilight. The air had grown teeth, biting at my exposed skin. I didn't have a flashlight, but a full moon was rising, casting long, skeletal shadows across the yard. It was enough. I walked from the house to the barn, my footsteps the only sound in the vast, silent landscape. The crooked barn door groaned in protest as I forced it open wider, slipping through the gap into the cavernous darkness within. The air inside was thick with the smell of old hay, manure, and something else, something wild, like mice and thyme. Moonlight streamed through the gaps in the roof, illuminating the interior in ghostly patches. The place was immense. A central aisle was flanked by rows of stalls, their wooden gates hanging open like mouths in a silent scream. A huge hayloft loomed above me, lost in the shadows. I made my way to the back, to the old milking stalls my grandfather had written about. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I counted the floorboards from the west wall, my fingers tracing the rough, splintered wood. 1, 2, 3. The third one. It looked no different from the others. I knelt, trying to find a purchase with my fingernails, but the boards were flush. I needed a tool. I searched the nearby stalls, my eyes adjusting to the gloom. In the corner of one, I found a rusted old crowbar. It was heavy in my hand, a solid piece of iron, a tool for building and for tearing things down. I wedged the tip into the crack beside the third floorboard and leaned back with all my weight. The wood groaned. Then, with a sharp crack, the nails gave way and the board popped up. I tossed it aside and peered into the darkness below. For a moment, I saw nothing but dirt and cobwebs. My heart sank. Had I been too late? Had someone else found it? Then my fingers brushed against something hard and cold. Metal. I reached deeper, my hands digging into the loose, cool earth. My fingers closed around the handle of a metal box. It was an old Army surplus ammo can, heavy and solid. I pulled it from its hiding place and carried it out of the barn, back into the clean, cold moonlight. I sat on the ground, the frozen earth seeping through my jeans, and placed the box in front of me. The latches were stiff with rust, but I forced them open. The lid creaked open. The first thing I saw was another stack of letters tied with the same twine as before. Beneath them were several oilcloth-wrapped bundles. I picked one up. It was heavy, dense. I unwrapped the corner and my breath caught in my throat. It was cash. Stacks of $100 bills tightly bound. I unwrapped the others. More cash. I didn't count it then, not precisely, but I knew. It was more than enough to pay the taxes. It was enough to live on for a while, enough to start fixing this place. It was a lifeline, a gift from a ghost. My grandfather had left me the tools I needed to fight, but he'd also left me the rest of the story. I set the money aside and picked up the letters. I read them one by one, there in the pale moonlight, the wind whispering through the dry grass around me. The story that unfolded was worse than I could have imagined. My grandfather, Arthur, had been a proud man, a good man, but my grandmother, his wife, had gotten sick, a rare form of cancer. The treatments were experimental, expensive, and not covered by insurance. He'd sold off cattle, mortgaged the land, but it wasn't enough. So he turned to a man he knew from his younger days, a man named Silas Blackwood, who ran a high-stakes lending operation out of the city. Blackwood was a predator who preyed on desperate people. He gave my grandfather the money, but the interest was criminal. When my grandmother passed away, the debt remained, and it had ballooned to an impossible sum. Blackwood didn't just want money. He saw the ranch with its water rights and its potential for development, and he wanted it. He started squeezing. He sent men to threaten my grandfather, to sabotage his equipment, to poison his well. After my parents died in a car accident, I was all my grandfather had left, and Silas Blackwood saw me as the final piece of leverage he needed. He threatened my life. He told my grandfather that if he didn't sign over the deed to the ranch, I would have an accident of my own. That was when Arthur Sterling made his impossible choice. He couldn't go to the police. Blackwood had connections, and it would have put me in even more danger. So he devised a plan. He contacted Mr. Gable, set up the trust. He gathered every last cent he had, the money I now held in my hands, and hid it. Then he faked his own death. A boating accident in a nearby reservoir. They never found the body. He just disappeared. He gave up his name, his home, his life, and his only grandson to ensure Silas Blackwood could never get his hands on me or the ranch. The final letter was short, the handwriting shakier than the others. I don't know where I'm going, Leo. I just know I can't stay. I hope one day you'll understand. The money in this box is clean. It's the last of what I had before I met Blackwood. Don't let his dirty money taint this place. Use this to pay the taxes. Use it to build a life. That's all I ever wanted for you. The land is honest. The work is hard, but it's a good life. It's your life. Don't let him take it from you. I sat there for a long time, the letters in my lap, the cold seeping into my bones. The moon was high in the sky now, a silent white witness. The anger I felt was a pure, cold fire. Silas Blackwood, Mountain Valley Holdings. He hadn't given up. He had waited 12 years, patiently, for the property to fall into the hands of an 18-year-old kid with no money and no connections, assuming I'd be an easy mark. He'd assumed I'd take the quick cash and run. He had underestimated my grandfather, and he had underestimated me. The rage gave the way to a profound, aching clarity. I knew what I had to do. The sun was just beginning to rise when I started the long walk back to town. The 10 miles didn't feel long. With every step I felt more solid, more real. The cold air in my lungs, the crunch of my boots on the gravel, the weight of the cash-filled box in my arms. It was all grounding me, forging me into someone new. I wasn't just a system kid anymore. I wasn't just an orphan. I was Leo Sterling, and I was going home to fight for my name. I walked straight to Mr. Gable's office. It was early, not even 7 o'clock, but a light was on. I climbed the stairs and knocked. He opened the door, looking surprised to see me, his hair disheveled, a coffee mug in his hand. He saw the mud on my jeans, the exhaustion in my face, the metal box in my arms. "Leo, what happened? Are you all right?" I walked past him into the office and set the box down on his desk with a heavy thud. "I'm not selling," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I'm paying the taxes." I opened the box. Mr. Gable stared at the stacks of cash, his mouth slightly agape. He looked from the money to my face and back again. "My God, son," he whispered. "Where did you get this?" "My grandfather left it for me," I said, "along with these." I placed the letters on top of the money. "I think you need to read these. I think they'll explain a lot." For the next hour, Mr. Gable sat and read, his expression growing grimmer with each page. I just sat and waited, watching the morning light fill the dusty office. When he was finished, he took off his glasses and slowly polished them with a handkerchief, a long, deep sigh escaping his lips. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not a lawyer looking at a client, but a man looking at another man with a profound sense of respect. "I knew Arthur was in trouble," he said quietly. "I never knew how much. He was a proud man. He never told me the details. He just told me to protect the trust, no matter what." He pushed the letters back toward me. "Silas Blackwood. I've heard the name. A shark in a suit. He's been circling this valley for years, buying up land through shell corporations like Mountain Valley Holdings. He has deep pockets and a team of ruthless lawyers." He paused, his gaze intense. "Leo, you need to understand what you're doing. If you pay these taxes, you are declaring war on this man. He will not just walk away, he will come after you, and he will use every legal loophole and every dirty trick he can to break you and get this land." "I know," I said. "But it's my land. My grandfather died or disappeared to keep it for me. I'm not running." Mr. Gable studied my face for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his own. It transformed his stern features, making him look younger. "Your grandfather would be proud of you, son, incredibly proud." He stood up and straightened his tie, a new energy in his movements. "All right then, let's go to war. First thing, we go to the county clerk's office. We will pay those back taxes in full, in cash. We get the receipt and file the deed in your name, free and clear. That will be the first shot fired. Then we prepare for the counterattack." That morning was a blur. We walked into the county office and I laid $20,000 in cash on the counter. The clerk, a woman with a beehive hairdo and a perpetually surprised expression, counted it 3 times. Mr. Gable handled the paperwork with a calm efficiency that was both reassuring and intimidating. When we walked out, I had a piece of paper in my hand, a deed. It said my name, Leo Sterling. Owner. It was the most powerful thing I had ever held. The fallout was immediate. The next day, I received a certified letter from a Mountain Valley Holdings legal team, officially rescinding their offer. 2 days after that, a notice was posted on my front gate. A survey claim suggesting the property lines were in dispute. Mr. Gable called it a classic harassment tactic. They're trying to bleed you dry with legal fees, bog you down in paperwork until you give up, he explained over the phone. Don't worry, I'll handle it. And he did. He filed a counter-motion so fast it made their heads spin. But I knew this was just the beginning. I moved out to the ranch. I had no electricity, no running water, but I had a roof over my head. I spent the first week just cleaning. I swept out the dust of 12 years. I scrubbed the floors. I washed the windows, letting the bright, clean sunlight pour into the house for the first time in over a decade. I bought a new mattress and a sleeping bag in town and slept in my old room, the one with the rocking horse. Every night I'd read another one of my grandfather's letters, not the ones that told the dark story, but the others, the ones that were just for me. He wrote about the ranch, about the changing seasons, about the satisfaction of hard work. He told me about my parents, stories I'd never heard. He told me he loved me. They were letters from a ghost, but they made me feel less alone than I ever had in a house full of people. The work was overwhelming. The house needed a new roof. The plumbing was shot. The barn had structural damage. But I wasn't entirely alone. News travels fast in a small town. The story of the orphan kid who came back to claim his family's ranch, who paid off a massive tax bill in cash to fight off a big city developer. It became something of a local legend. One day, Jim, the man who'd given me a ride, showed up at my gate with 2 of his sons. He didn't say much. He just looked at the sagging porch, then at me. "My boy is a carpenter," he said, jerking a thumb at his oldest son. "Porch needs fixing. We'll be here Saturday morning. Have coffee on." He turned and left before I could even say thank you. And he came. That Saturday, Jim and his sons arrived with a truck full of lumber and tools. They spent the entire day helping me tear down the old porch and frame a new one. Martha, his wife, brought a picnic basket filled with fried chicken and potato salad. They didn't ask for anything in return. They just helped. That was how it started. A few days later, another neighbor, a retired electrician, stopped by and offered to help me figure out the wiring. The woman who ran the hardware store gave me a deep discount on supplies, telling me, "Your grandfather was a good man. It's good to have a Sterling back on that land." These people, strangers, were weaving me into the fabric of their community. They saw the fight I was in, and they chose a side. They chose me. Silas Blackwood and his company didn't give up. They filed more motions. They sent surveyors who tried to intimidate me. They even had a lawyer show up one day, a man with a slick suit and a predatory smile, who offered me a new deal. $50,000. "Take the money, kid," he'd said, looking around at the half-repaired house with disgust. "This place is a ruin. You're in over your head." I remembered my grandfather's words. Don't let them have it. I looked the lawyer in the eye. "Tell Mr. Blackwood this ranch isn't for sale. Not now, not ever." He'd just shaken his head and left, but I knew the fight was far from over. I was learning that home isn't just a place you inherit. It's a place you build. It's a place you fight for. Every nail I hammered, every wire I connected, every board I replaced, it was an act of defiance. It was me, putting down roots in soil my family had worked for generations. The physical work was healing the ranch, and the emotional work was healing me. I was becoming the man my grandfather had hoped I would be. Strong, resilient, a sterling. The scars of the past 12 years were still there. They always would be. But they weren't open wounds anymore. They were a part of my story, a part of the foundation of the man I was building, right here on this land. I had found my home, not just in the house or the 200 acres, but in the struggle itself, in the community that had embraced me, in the memory of a grandfather whose love was strong enough to reach across time and death to guide me back to where I belonged. It's been a year now since that day I walked out of the group home with my life in a box. The ranch is different. The house has a new roof and a solid porch. The windows are clean. I have electricity and running water. The barn door is fixed. I've started raising a small flock of sheep, and I'm learning from Jim how to manage the land. It's hard work. It's lonely sometimes. But it's a good life. It's an honest life. Mountain Valley Holdings is still out there. Their lawyers still send letters. The threat hasn't vanished, but it doesn't scare me anymore. Because I'm not just a kid they can push around. I'm a part of this place now, and this place is a part of me. We're still here, and we're not going anywhere. My grandfather wrote in his last letter that the land is honest. He was right. It doesn't care about your past or where you came from. It only cares about the work you put in. It gives back what you give it. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I have something to give. I found more than just a home out here. I found a history I never knew I had, and a future I never thought was possible. I learned that inheritance isn't about money or property. It's about the stories and the sacrifices that came before us. It's about the love that's strong enough to last, even when people are gone. My grandfather sacrificed everything to give me a choice. Not just a choice between selling and staying, but a choice of who I wanted to be. And I choose to be here. I choose to be a steward of this land, a keeper of his memory. I choose to be a man he would be proud of. And that brings me back to you. My story is about a ranch, a hidden box of money, and a fight against a faceless corporation. But at its heart, it's about finding a place to belong. It's about rewriting a story of abandonment into a story of protection. It's about choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Your story might be different. Your battles might have different names and faces. But the core of it, the feeling of being lost and the search for a way home, that's a universal human story. And it's why I share this. To remind you that even when it feels like you've been left with nothing, there might be a hidden legacy waiting for you. It might not be a box of money. It might be a memory, a forgotten piece of advice, a strength you didn't know you had, passed down to you by someone who loved you. Look for it. And when you find it, use it. Use it to build your home, whatever and wherever that may be. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, if it made you think, if it gave you even a small piece of hope, that's all I can ask for. This channel is a place for stories like this. Stories about real struggle, real loss, and the incredible strength it takes to find your way through. If you want to be a part of this community, please consider subscribing. And I want you to do one more thing. In the comments below, I want you to share a piece of your story. Not the whole thing, just a piece. Tell me about a time you chose the harder path. Tell me about a person whose memory gives you strength. Tell me what the word home means to you. I will read every single comment. Because your story matters. We're all just trying to find our way home. And maybe, by sharing our maps, we can help each other get there. Be strong, be well, and never, ever let them take what's yours.